I really got to keep it straight in my head what the name of this thing is. Otherwise, I'm going to call it Highlander. I just know it. Outlander! Patreon commission. I was commissioned to take a look at the first 2 episodes. This is a series I've been aware of for a while, since long before I had a YouTube channel, because I used to work at a Barnes & Noble, and I started out shelving books. I shelved this series for however many books there were in, like, I don't know, 2002 or whatever. But this is a series also that my mother reads the book series. I knew about the TV series, which is still running, I think. And okay. So it's not really my genre. It is a romance primarily, and as I discussed in my video on the main channel about a heated rivalry, not really my genre, but I can find things to like in it, or at least appreciate when it's well done. So, in case you don't know, the central premise of this one that there is this woman, Claire, who was a nurse in World War II, like actually, treating wounded soldiers. And through vague Scottish mysticism, she ends up back in the 1800s in Scotland. And sort of what happens to her there as she eventually is, I say eventually, pretty quickly, is pulled increasingly close to a man by the name of Jamie, who will be her love interest. Now, obviously, I only got 2 episodes in, and here's what I will say. It is very well cast. It's pretty well shot. The music is great. It's actually kind of funny because Bear McCreary, who does the music on this, also does the music on Battlestar Galactica, which I do the podcast with Jesse Gender. We're almost on the 3rd season on that, and she had told me how much she loved the music in that. And while the music hasn't been bad in Battlestar Galactica, it also hasn't stood out to me very often. This music jumped out to me immediately. And I don't know if it's that it's better than what's in Galactica, or if it's just put more prominent and it feels less backgrounded than in Galactica. That might be the case. But the music's fantastic. That's really good stuff. And it's paced very well. Now, because we actually spend a lot more time getting to know Claire and her husband in the 1940s than I expected to. I expected that to be a pretty brief bit, and probably the husband was going to appear to be some kind of tool, or like she would wish she wasn't there. Like, it's not. There's actually a lot of adult complications to their relationship, because shortly after they got married, they spent the next 5 years at war and barely saw each other. And they're kind of rediscovering each other as they take this sort of second honeymoon into Scotland. And the dynamic between them is interesting. And then to sort of see it get turned on its head when she ends up back there and very swiftly runs into her husband's ancestor, a guy who gets called Black Jack, who is personality-wise quite different, but also is sort of the initial cause of some of the problems that I'm going to have with it. Hold on to that. I'm going to try and stay positive for as long as I can. But like the pace at which it moves and the amount of time it spent in the 1940s before sending her back, and really kind of dwelling in that sense of mysticism and folklore and fairy stories that are prominent in certain parts of Scotland. I like it. I'm going to say that. I don't know, not being from Scotland, or even really having family, at least that I know of, that's still around there. I have some connections to Scotland. Like, I actually know what clan I have some bloodline relations to. I talk about being aggressively English, and I am, but like I've got some links there. McNabb was the clan that I have some connections to, but like that's ancient family history. I'm not in a position to say how genuine or respectfully it deals with the notions of to what degree paganism is either still practiced or has lingering effects in the people or the area. I will say I like how it was presented. I'm not going to make this claim, but if somebody actually from Scotland wanted to say it felt like it fetishized their culture, I would believe them. Again, I don't know that it does do that, but I could imagine somebody saying that it does, if that makes any sense. It's one of those things where I'm like, I like this, but I also don't know enough to know if it's properly respectful or not. It didn't feel cheap. How about that? Here's what I will say. Regardless of how accurate any of it is, it does feel born from a place of love. Like kind of it, God, this is going to be a weird comparison. Kind of like how in the way it's very clear that Herbert, the guy who wrote the Dune books, had a real deep love and fascination with Arabic cultures and desert societies, even if he kind of fetishized them in his depiction in those books. Frank Herbert. Couldn't think of his first name there for a minute. But it's still born out of like a deep appreciation. And that's kind of how this feels. How accurate it is it fetishizing? I don't know, but it feels appreciative and kind of reverent in a way that like I got into the vibe of, certainly. There's the lead actors I don't really recognize in this. There are a few actors who I did spot, who I like a lot. Graham McTavish, who I always like him and anything. He's like a comfort actor for me. And I think it's Annette Badland. She played Margaret in Boomtown, first series of Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston. She was the one surviving Slitheen. She's in this. She's great in this. But the leads and the minor characters are well portrayed, and they feel very rich. Not necessarily in the writing, but certainly in the performance. It feels like you're dealing with actors who have really thought about what these people's day-to-day lives are, even if we only see them briefly. All that having been said, okay, so Ronald D. Moore, who is the showrunner on Battlestar Galactica, was also the showrunner on this. I don't know if he is still. I assume not, because I know he also does For All Mankind, and he's got the God of War adaptation coming up, which, oh, God. Okay, I'm not going to go down that tangent. But I assume he handed the reins of this off to someone else at some point. But, yeah, his fingerprints are kind of on this. So if you aren't following the podcast, I am kind of fed up with Ronald T. Moore on a couple of fronts, but the big one is how he handles women. And the first half hour or so of the first episode actually had a lot of promise. It made me wonder if the original books having been written by a woman and him, working off that was tamping down some of his own instincts a bit. But then in the back 20 minutes of the first episode, our lead character got threatened with rape 3 times in 20 minutes. And I went, oh, okay, great. Here we go. And look, I'm sure that the argument in favor of this is some version of historic realism. Like, that's what would have been threatened. That would have been the greatest danger to like a woman at this time in these places with these people. Here's the thing. Even if that's true, which I'm not going to get into an argument whether or not it is, even if it is, if you're not making a story about a woman who is sexually assaulted, and at least as far as I got, this does not appear to be that. If that's not the story you're telling, then it gets established pretty firmly the first time she is threatened with rape. What were the other 2 times for? And it would be one thing if it just stopped with episode 1, but it doesn't. I didn't keep track of how many times the subject of rape was brought up in the second episode, but it is repeatedly. But more to the point, there are two separate instances in the second episode of women's bodies, their naked bodies, being put on display. One of them, while she is being actively sexually assaulted. Like, I get that it's part of what's being done. Like, the guy that we're meant to hate tears her top off, not only tears her top off, but puts her on display in front of her brother. I understand why he does that and what it says about him that he does it, but I also don't need to see it. For the kind of scumbag that he is, and this is the same guy who threatens, or not even threatens, tries to rape Claire first time he sees her. So, like, we've already established this about him. We definitely didn't need to see it again while you proudly, and for a really extended shot, display a sexual assault victim's bare chest for the audience. And, like, Jamie's telling a story. Like, these are flashbacks we get while he's telling a story. If you just needed to make the point of what this guy did, Jamie just could have told us. What I generally point to make the point that you do not always need visuals to accompany a story about what somebody went through. I will point to Quint's monologue in Jaws, where he talks about his experience on the USS Indianapolis and the sharks. There is not a single image that, like, flashes back or shows you. Like, it just stays on him and he tells you that story, and it is gripping and it makes the point. And you can do that. You don't have, if you want to make the point, if you think it's necessary to make the point, okay, you didn't have to show us. You didn't have to put a woman's body, whose character is being actively sexually assaulted, on display while you do it. And then, very soon after that, in the second episode, we put the heroine's body on display. Not in a sexual assault context, at least, thank goodness, but they have her get dressed and, like, get help getting dressed. Because for what she travels back in time and shows up with is basically considered to be just like a nightgown, like something to sleep in. Like, you can't walk around just in that. And so we watch as the layers and layers and layers get put on her. But before they can start getting put on her, she has to be naked first, which in and of itself, fine, whatever. But you could have shot it in a way that didn't actually show her breasts, didn't actually show her backside, but you did that anyway. This is our heroine. This is the character in theory that we are meant to relate to the most. But you still put her on display like a piece of meat at an auction. And it's really fucking gross. I don't love seeing what Ronald D. Moore is like outside of the confinements of basic cable. Because frankly, this is very much in line with the kind of shit that he pulled in Battlestar Galactica, except it's worse because he's actually allowed to show nudity. I don't trust him as a writer. I'm not saying he's a bad writer. But for me and my taste and what I'm comfortable with, I don't trust him. To try and end on a lighter note, I will say that, well, actually, before I get to the light note, I have to say one other creepy thing, unfortunately, is while quickly, just for my own edification, browsing a synopsis of just the first season, the word rape scanned by my eyes quite a few times additionally. So, like, there's no way you will see me watching any more of this unless I am paid to do so. But, okay, let's end on a lighter note. So, apparently, and I found this while looking up that synopsis, apparently the writer of the books, Diana Gabaldon, hope I'm pronouncing that okay, but she was apparently initially inspired by Doctor Who because she saw an episode with Jamie McCrimmon, the second Doctor companion. Jamie and the Doctor are one of the best Doctor and companion pairings in the show, and that's what first got her starting to think about doing a story dealing with Highlanders from around that period of time. And of course, Jamie McCrimmon was played by Fraser Hines. And her romantic hero in her book series is Jamie Fraser. I mean, she spelled Fraser differently in the book than Fraser Hines' the first name actually is, but That's wonderful. And the other funny thing is the fact that there's time travel in her story, that wasn't influenced by Doctor Who. Apparently, that happened because she was in the process of writing it and she just kept finding that her heroine was thinking about and responding to things with more modern sensibilities. And rather than try and wrangle that and dial that back, she was like, okay, well, let me just find a reason for why she is thinking about these things in more modern terms and feels like she's out of time, and then just came up with the time travel conceit. And that's just a fun thing to read about, like the origin of ideas like that. Like as a writer, I find that stuff interesting. And we'll end it on that note because I'm going to repeat something I've said more than a few times now on the podcast. Ronald D. Moore. Ron, go to therapy. Anyways, Outlander, first 2 episodes. Have you seen those? Have you seen more of that than I have seen? Are you a fan of it? Do you like the books better, the show better? Whatever your thoughts are on any of it, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. It enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those will help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Pickapok, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Palber Rabajoggle, Cindy Ella, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and thanking some random folks from my lower tiers of support. Thank you, Pippa Barwell, Mandy Walla, and Jessica, the Trans Metal Alchemist. The boys are back, and we've got a new one here. We have Navarro has joined the mischief. Okay, so that's just what we're doing now. All right.